You're listening to Experience This, a show about the emerging experience economy with your host, Tom Young.
Hey, welcome to the show. I'm sitting down here with Kiran Bajwa in the studio.
Hey, Tom. How's it going?
All right. Hey, Kiran, today in our continuing journey on this Experience This podcast, we're going to talk about the notion of gift giving to family members and close friends, and then tie it in with a bunch of other topics like dematerializing and decluttering your stuff. But the notion of giving experiences to people as opposed to physical gifts.
Yep.
So you and I talked a little bit about this before, but with my kids, I have three kids, TJ, Sarah, and Heather, is 27, 24, and 14 at this time. I about 10 years ago stopped buying them physical gifts, and largely because they have too much stuff. If they need something, they have it, and anything else just becomes clutter. And it feels like the gift is an obligation, like, oh, it's Christmas or it's their birthday, I got to buy them something, whether I want to or not. So what I started to do was to decouple the gift giving from the time and decoupling it from material things, and started to give them, because I travel quite a bit in consulting. I said, basically, we're going to do a trip, and it could be a 3 or 4 day weekend, or it could be a trip anywhere they wanted to go. That was reasonable. We planned it out, and so I gave them the experience of travel.
So I was going to ask about the planning piece. So are these pre-planned trips, or are these kind of just, let's, do they have input, or is this you kind of saying, let's just figure it out?
The experience is probably dominated by the pre-planning. Like, what are we going to go? Where are we going? And we talk about that, and we'll research it and decide stuff. So, I have a list and I keep a list, and I have a blog for most of these trips. Just about all of them. I was blogging. And that's actually how we came up with the Rumjog name, was from this experience. But, one of the first trips we did, I did with TJ, and he, at the time, and this is 2006, that's 13 years ago, so he was 14. And he had never had lobster before. And so our first trip, one of our first trips that we did in this whole series was like on a Thursday or Friday morning. We just got in the car and drove to Maine.
Oh, nice.
And we left early in the morning, and we got to Kennebunkport by noon.
Wow.
And we stopped at this shack in Kennebunkport called a Lobster Dock or something like that, and we had a lobster roll sandwich. So we drove the whole way up there. It took us about 8 hours, and had a lobster roll sandwich. And I said, so how is it? And it was like, it's all right.
He's like, I can get this in New Jersey?
Yeah, we could have gotten in New Jersey, but we went to Maine so the whole weekend was surrounded around, having fun in Maine and lobster and stuff like that. So we booked a hotel room, and we just hung out in Maine, and we didn't really have a plan. We went to the LL Bean outlet that's there in Freeport, and we did a couple of experiences there. And actually, it's interesting, looking back, they would sell experiences.
At LL Bean?
Yeah.
Wow.
So one was archery experience.
Oh, nice.
Because they're trying to promote their gear. So you go out and you pay like $12 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And they take you out to the archery range, and you get to shoot a bow and arrow. They'd have a little mini class. And another experience was we went kayaking in the ocean.
Yeah.
And had a lot of fun. So we kayaked by this lobster shack on the water. So we drove back after the experience, and we sat down and had I forget what it was, but we got like some kind of lunch, but then they had 2 lobsters for $20. So we just got that as the on top of it. So, but this is like the whole the bib, the
really
lobster. You got a full lobster sitting in front of you, and you got to clean it out, and they have instructions on how to do it.
So was the journey getting up there part of the experience as well, or did you guys kind of like blitz it?
We kind of blitzed it. I don't remember too much about driving up there.
Yeah.
I do remember a lot being up there. We had a lot of fun. But I remember this epiphany, when we got to this place, I think it was in Trenton, Maine, right on the water there by Booth Bay Harbor. We're eating these lobsters right in the heart of lobster country, right? We're cracking them, we're eating them, and like, it's a lot of work. I like crab better, crab cake is no work.
So you started this when they were teenagers.
Yeah, so TJ and Sarah were, probably 14 and 11 or 15 and 12 at the time, and then Heather was at that time just a child. So I didn't really start doing it with Heather until she was maybe 7 or 8.
Yeah. I think it's a really good idea for teenagers. I'm curious because I don't know, I'm making generalizations. I don't have teenagers, but from things I've heard, I know teenagers are very into stuff right now. So I wonder if teenagers are open to the idea of getting a trip for, a birthday or Christmas versus a new pair of sneakers.
Yeah, I didn't do it with their consent.
Yeah, so maybe that's the way to go.
I wasn't interested in what they wanted in that way because I just refused. I just was not buying any more shit for them.
Yeah.
And they had everything they needed. And if you ask them now, you know them all.
Yeah.
If you ask them, we had some great trips. I mean, it started out like, we drove up to Maine because he didn't have lobster, and then, another trip I did with him, he liked roller coasters, so we went to Cedar Point out in Ohio.
Yeah. And
did all the roller coasters, like the roller coaster capital. But then some of the trips got pretty exotic. When in 2012, when London hosted the Olympics, Sarah graduated high school that year.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a little bit more of a special thing. I combined birthday, whatever, and graduation. And right after she graduated, we went to the Olympics. So, but no, I shouldn't say that. We went to Europe.
Mm-hmm.
We went to Paris, and then British Telecom, who was somebody I was doing business with at the time, invited us to the Olympics. And I said, hey, I'm in Paris. And they said, well, come over and we'll meet you in the London station. Just take the train over. And a limo picked us up in London and whooshed us over to Hyde Park, and we stayed at the Mandarin Oriental for a day. And then we went they took us to the Olympics. They took us all over London for a day and a half.
Wow, pretty fun.
And we saw, at the time, we thought it was Michael Phelps' last race. It turns out he came back in the 2016 Olympics, but we didn't know that at the time. And we went to London, and then we flew to Venice, and then we went to Rome, and then flew home. So it was a wild trip. And we flew into Brussels, went to Paris, took the Channel train to London, went to the Olympics, went to Venice, went to Rome. By the end, I think we'd overdosed the experience because Rome was our last stop. And while we had some fun there, she was really tired by then. I'm used to traveling, so that wasn't that big a deal for me. But if you don't travel a lot, 5 European cities like that in 10 days,
that's good.
It's probably too much.
Yeah.
So
especially just to and from the airports and all that.
But
jazz.
Another exotic trip we did. It was when TJ graduated high school. We went to China, and I'd read that the World's Fair was going to be in Shanghai, and so we're like, all right, let's go. I mean, I was always fascinated by the World's Fair, like from the the 1964 World's Fair in Queens, New York, and some of the, but it still goes on, but it's not what it used to be. So anyway, it was in Shanghai. So okay, we go to Beijing, and then we'll go to Shanghai. So just like a lot of the trips I did, we bookended the trip. Yeah, I had a flight into Shanghai. A flight into Beijing, a flight out of Shanghai. We had to get visas and all that stuff. And I booked hotels, but I didn't do anything else other than that.
Which we've talked about is quite fun. Sometimes just you need to bookend the trip and have a little bit of prep.
Yeah. It can bite you in the ass. Yeah. Because I had done a lot of research on taking a train from Shanghai to Beijing to Shanghai. They have some pretty cool trains that you can do that with, and there's one that's a diplomatic train. So I'm figuring, okay, I'm reading the different kind of tickets you get and all that, and having fun on the train to see it, compare it to European trains. And so when we got to Beijing, I had hired a guide and a driver to get us around, to take us to the Great Wall and take us on a tour of the Olympic facilities, because we went the year after the Olympics, I think. And it was great. I mean, we went around. TJ at the time was probably, he's tall. He was like 6'2", 6'3", and the blonde hair.
Stuck out
white,
like a sore thumb.
White guy. We walked through Tiananmen Square and people were staring. And one family came up and wanted to take his picture with him. So,
and you told me once about a story where I think you guys went to France and took a class on how to make croissants.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about the notion of these localized experiences, and I think Airbnb is trying to get into this. But those are probably really good gifts that actually, plug you right into the local culture and give you a feel for what life might be like in a city.
Yeah, this is a trip I did when Sarah graduated college.
Yeah.
So she was high school four, so she graduated in 16. So it was about 2.5 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And she took her sister with her. So it was me and the two girls, and we flew to Paris for 5 or 6 days. We were there. And, I'd been to Paris many times. And Sarah was there once before. And I think Heather might have been there once with her mother. I forget. But so anyway, I love going to Paris. It's probably my favorite place to go. And my girls like it too. So we stayed on the Champs-Élysées, and I used to get Marriott points. We stayed there. And but I wanted to do something different,
Yeah.
And so I went on one of these tour sites, and they had a baking class in one of the suburbs of Paris. And so you go in, and you go into a working bakery, and the guy, it was some award-winning pastry chef. Anyway, so we got there around 10 a.m. and it was just me and the two girls, and then we had a translator.
Yep.
Although Sarah spoke enough French she could get by, but we had a translator and then the chef. And I think there was a blogger, a reporter there. But we had sort of very detailed attention. And he went through, because they were done with their bakery work, and we went through how they made croissants and baguettes. And they went through the whole process. The girls helped make a batch of each. And, we were probably there for 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
And I would say of that whole trip, and by the way, it sounds kind of exotic to go do that. And in some ways it really is. But in terms of the expense of the whole trip, that tour that we did was probably $300, $400 for the tour. But it defined the whole trip. That was the thing that everybody remembers about that trip. We did a lot of fun things that time, but that was the dominant characteristic. And it was an experience.
Yeah.
We didn't walk away with
like tchotchkes of...
No, I think we walked away with a baguette. That was it. We ate it. But
which is a much nicer experience. So I think not buying less stuff throughout the year and probably putting that money towards a more memorable experience is the way to go. And also because it ties back to the notion of just getting rid of less shit in your house. But I also think the types of experiences, so gift giving before in terms of experience has been definitely around dining, giving people gift certificates to restaurants. But I think it's definitely evolving now to much more creative, immersive experiences than just the static stuff that's been around for ages.
Yeah, to me, I'm very sensitive to the kind of experiences you get, because at one level you don't want to go so far afield that you run the risk of it just being a complete waste of time, not interested. So you really have to, and you also don't want to do a thing that just falls into the same old.
Yeah.
So I had a rule early on in this whole thing, because we've been doing it for about 10, 12 years, 13 years now. No repeats.
Oh, it's a good idea.
Right. So although we've violated the rule several times, because we've done, I'm telling you a few things, and we've done a lot of trips, but you want to do 1 foot in familiar and 1 foot out. So it extends your boundaries versus running the risk of stepping too far afield or just getting lost in the prior experiences. So, another trip we did when TJ and I we went to Europe once, and we did we anchored the tour around the Band of Brothers series on HBO.
Wow.
So Band of Brothers, if you haven't watched it, is it's a drama documentary style of the 101st Airborne Division in World War II.
Okay.
So they were at D-Day, and they landed in Normandy, and they made their way through Germany, Belgium, France, etc., all the way down to Berchtesgaden, which is where basically Hitler's last holdout was, a Nazi holdout before they surrendered. So they were there in a lot of different cool places. So we started out. We flew to Munich because I was to get the best flight, and then we took a train up to Paris, and we started in Paris.
Did you plan this whole thing yourself, or was this a tour company that?
We planned it most ourselves, but we did use a tour company in different spots. So we got to Paris and relaxed a little bit, and then we started the trip. We went up to Bayeux, France, which is right in the Normandy region there, and we went to Saint-Mary-Église, where the 101st Airborne actually landed. And there's a quick little museum there. And then we hired a tour group. And this is one of the things I would encourage people to do is get guides, hire a tour to learn about some of the local things, because it's absolutely worth it to get a sense of what you're looking at as opposed to going somewhere and not knowing. But we were in this tour in Normandy area. We went to the American Cemetery, which is great. I've been there several times. It's a great stop. Saint-Mary-Église. We went to the Omaha beaches. We went to a couple of the battlefields and stuff like that where people were doing things. But we had a guide teaching us or telling us of some of the details of the place. And one of the people on the tour was a retired colonel from the 101st Airborne who just retired.
Oh, wow.
So that 101st Airborne Division, there's a lot of lore and history within the 101st Airborne where they remember some of these things. So they all were familiar with this, and some of the heroes of the 101st Airborne were from the Band of Brothers, and they revered them. And so we went through the whole thing. It was great. We had lunch with this guy and his sister, and it was a fantastic experience.
Really cool.
And then we went down through Bastogne, and we made it all the way back down to Munich, and then we went to Eagle's Nest in Berchtesgaden. But that was a great trip where, we were trying to anchor it off of a prior historical event.
Yeah.
And just have fun along the way. And again, we didn't have everything planned. Like I said, you can get snake bit. Like we got there and it was hard for us to travel around because France changed the rule on rail passes. And
yeah, you kind of just have to wing it and figure some of it out.
Yeah. In fact, we could not get out of Paris to get to Germany because they had these rules. You had to make prior reservations. So we took a train to the edge of France, like Metz, and then just jumped on a German train that was a cross-border train, got into Germany, and then we figured it out from there. So we ended up, I don't know, that night, we weren't even sure we were going to end up. We ended up in Frankfurt, and and just found a place when we got there. And it was a lot of seat of the pants.
Yeah.
But you just deal with it, and it makes it part of the experience. And, like I said, my kids now are the older kids, and even Heather, who's 14 now, very seasoned travelers. Their passports have been filled up.
And I think sometimes people are maybe deterred from doing some of this because they think it's a huge financial undertaking. And maybe some of that stems from because I've never been to, I haven't taken kids, obviously, to Disney World, but I heard that just drains your pocketbook. And so, but I think people can actually do experiences for, moderate to budget pricing if they want. And I don't think it has to be these elaborate, super expensive things.
So a lot of these trips I did were quite expensive. But I would say I was just taking advantage of using the points that I had.
Yeah.
So if I would have paid for that China trip, it would have been over $50,000.
Oh my God.
If I told you what we did.
And what was the exchange rate? Because I was like,
no. I'm saying we flew first class to back and forth. That alone is like $30,000 for the tour. Now I used points, so I had a bunch that were going to expire, and I just used them for that. I used points in the hotels, and we had butlers, and we had awesome hotels. It's like $1,000 a night. I would never ever pay that. So I just used points. So the trip still cost like $5,000 or $6,000 on that China trip, as an example. But I never would have paid the $50,000 it would have cost. Same's true with some of the European trips I took. We used points. It's still expensive. It was still several $1,000s to go do this stuff. But like the main trip that we took was probably under $1,000. It was, for meals and the experience and driving up there and 2 nights at a hotel at a local Marriott. It was definitely under $1,000. So, I mean, if you're having a hard time making ends meet, this is probably not for you.
Right.
But think about it, because I mean, add up all your gifts that you're giving too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not buying the gifts. Now you can say I'm buying stuff anyway, when they need it. But there are lots of things you can do around experiences that don't cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
It really requires more imagination than it does resources.
Yeah.
Now the resources obviously help open up a whole bunch of things you can go do. But you can just go camping, or you can go do something. And so, I try to strive this and do more than just the big annual trip. We try to do things like that a lot, just fun things. Go drive for the, weekend.
Well, you're probably talking about those experiences amongst each other a lot more versus some product or something that's just sitting somewhere.
Yeah.
Collecting dust.
So the trip I just got back from, I just did one of these.
Yeah.
Was to Tokyo.
Oh yeah, right. You and Heather.
Heather and I went to Tokyo for a week, and we went to Tokyo and Kyoto, and again, a lot of fun, great experience. That's something she'll always remember. This year, Sarah and I are doing Napa Valley.
Yeah,
we just got back from there. You and I were there with the team.
She's really gonna enjoy that.
Yeah, but But now that I've been there and I get a sense of what it is, we're probably going to do one day in Napa, 1 day in Sonoma, and then Vegas.
Oh, Vegas on there.
Well, Sarah likes to go to Vegas, so we're going to violate the repeat rule because we've been there several times.
And you guys are both champs of blackjack?
I like to. Yeah, I won that blackjack tournament on the cruise. So, no, but we'll probably make it a 4 or 5 day weekend and just we'll fly out there, do a couple things, because after doing it, I don't think I'd want to sit and drink wine for 3 days.
Yeah, it gets to be quite a lot.
No, 2 days is fine because you get a different feel. Napa's different than Sonoma.
Well, you're supposed to spit it out, right? I mean,
really? The hell? I'm not doing that. I went on one of those wine tasting things with my with Vicky, my second wife, and we were in where the hell we were in Beaune, which is right south of Dijon, in France.
Rhone?
Beaune, Beaune. I don't know how you say it. Beaune, whatever. And they had it was at this. They had this wine tour you took, but it was at this old hospital where they had they used to do bloodlettings and stuff like that, and they had these little bloodletting cups where they pour the wine in. You're supposed to take a sip of it and then spit it out and move on. Well, I drank it at 25 stations, and by the time we got to the end, I was a blotto. That was one of those ones you were actually supposed to spit it out. But I drank mine, and then I drank hers, and 25 stations later, I was really bad. But those kind of experiences are a lot of fun, and I would encourage people to really think about the notion of less stuff, more time. That's the theme of our podcast here, which is time optimization.
Yep.
And you can really turn this into a lot of fun, and you don't have to spend a lot of money.
Agreed. Yeah.
Repurpose some of the budget you have for gifts and do it for this. This can be your vacation too. I like to do the one-on-one trips with the kids because it's a time for me to get, if I'm very busy, just bond with them and have fun. The other thing is, if in the dynamic of having 3 kids, the youngest kid often doesn't get to do exactly what they want to do.
Right.
So like with Heather, who's the youngest, when we would do the stuff, we just do exactly whatever she wants to do.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
So what do you want to eat? When do you want to eat? Where do you want to go? What do you want? She's the boss. She's got to do what she wants to do. So when we started doing this, she was maybe 8 maybe 7, we would just do, and hers started off as just repeats. We would go down to Wildwood, New Jersey, down at the beach for 3 or 4 days. And what she wanted to do was to go on the boardwalk and ride the rides nonstop. Oh. So
whatever was fun,
whatever
right?
she wanted to do is what we did, and she loved it. It was great. So now every year she wants to go down there for a couple of days. So we'll probably do that this summer. We've done it basically just about every year except 1 or 2 in the last 6 or 7 years.
Right.
And then sometimes early on, because she would get homesick from her mother, so we would go down there for like say 3 or 4 days, and then the last day, Vicky, her mother, and TJ and Sarah would all come down, and then the last night we were all together, and she would show everybody where everything is.
Oh, that's really cool.
And I told everybody she's the boss.
And it kind of empowers her.
So
a
what
bit.
we were gonna like choosing where we're gonna eat.
Yeah.
Wherever she says.
That's awesome.
And just deal with it.
That's
if we're having ice cream for dinner, whatever she wants to do. And so it's just those experiences are great. They're part of one-on-one bonding, family bonding.
Yeah.
You can do it with friends, family. There's no real limit to this, but it does require you to rethink your paradigm about gift giving and how you value your time and how you want to spend your time.
And I think the last point that we have also talked about is it's more fun to do these with somebody else to share the experience. Oh
yeah. I get, we have Sean, our world traveler.
He's actually somewhere in Europe right now.
I think, is he in Kiev?
Correct.
I don't know.
And he lost his credit card. So.
Did you hear from him?
No, not since he lost his credit card.
So he may not be coming back.
We don't know.
So he went to Budapest and he was supposed to go to Kiev, but he lost all of his stuff.
Yeah. He lost his debit card and credit card.
Yeah, I don't know how that works. But anyway, he goes by himself and meets people. That's not my style. I don't think I would do well.
Yeah.
But it's a lot more fun to do it with people.
Yeah.
I like road trips. I'll give you one last trip we did that didn't cost a lot of money. Because everyone's going to be listening to this and thinking, who the hell is this guy traveling everywhere? First of all, I did it on points. And because I travel a lot for work. So I just leveraged an asset that I had, but I would never, really spend that kind of money. But this is a trip that basically anyone could do. This was Heather. We did this maybe last year. I get my time frame mixed up. Maybe it was the year before. We drove to Key West from here. So we're in New Jersey.
Oh, wow.
And it is 1,500 miles each way, 3,000 miles of driving. And she was horrified by the notion. But I said, no, you're not going to fly first class everywhere for the rest of your life.
This is her lesson in reality.
When I was growing up, we drove everywhere. I didn't get on a plane until people got dressed up to go fly back then. And so my entertainment was sitting behind my dad driving, watching the odometer spin. So we were going to do a road trip. Now, I've driven to Florida, I don't know, 40 or 50 times over the years, especially for college. We would go down there for spring break all the time. And, my sister lived down there. And when I was a vagabond, when I was younger, I used to drive all the time. So we drove down there. So we left here and again, I had really just bookended the trip, meaning that I had one experience in Orlando where we were going to go swim with dolphins at SeaWorld. So I had that reservation. So that was like on a Sunday. So we left Friday after school.
Wow.
And we had to be in Orlando by Sunday. Not a heavy lift.
Okay.
We get that. It was Friday night traffic. We hit DC. It's like
a parking lot.
A parking lot. And I'm like, holy shit, we got 1,000 miles to drive and we're standing still. I was ready to. So
Heather's like, I'm stuck in a car with my dad.
She was, yeah. So we pulled over and stayed over and just got up at dark 30 and cannonballed it down there on Saturday. Got down to Orlando Saturday night. And hung out, had fun at the hotel. And again, we're booking hotels on the fly.
Wow.
I didn't know where we were going to stay. So we're booking on the fly. And we did the experience on Sunday, had a great time. And we wrapped up around dinner time, and then from there we drove down to Palm Beach, and that's where my parents were living, with my aunt and uncle, and so we visited them for a day.
Yeah.
And then we left and went to Key Largo.
Oh, nice.
Which is south of Miami, one of the first big keys. I remember we stopped at the dog track.
I didn't know there was one.
Well, greyhound racing has been outlawed in Florida, but they had it then. They still have it now. This is the last year. And it's kind of seedy. But the Palm Beach Kennel Club is the nice end of seedy. And I don't know why they let her in. But they let her in, and we bet on a couple dog races. She won the first race. And like I don't think she's supposed to be here. She's only like 12. And so and then we went to Key Largo, then we went to Key West for a few days, and then I got pulled into some work issues, so she got pissed. So when we drove back, she wanted to, again, she's dictating a little bit.
Yeah.
She wanted to stop at Disney World. So I'm like, whatever. I've been there about 1 million times. So we stopped there and did that. And then my parents, since we were down there, they had relocated to Virginia Beach where they'd spend the summer times, and we stopped at Virginia Beach on the way back, and then we went home. So it was a big road trip. We had the hotels. Again, the hotels are just, anytime you want a vacation, you have to stay somewhere.
Yeah.
And we had the normal expense of travel, and we did it in the car, and I used my car, and we drove around, and we had a good time. And even driving down, we weren't in such a rush that we wouldn't stop and pull off the side of the road. Like we were driving down 95, and we said, "Hey, I've never been in downtown Savannah, Georgia."
Oh, right.
Where they got the Spanish moss hanging from the trees and stuff. So we took an hour detour and went into Savannah and drove around. And now I saw it, and I said, "Oh, that's pretty interesting." And then
back in the car,
and we go. And now, if you ask her again if she had a good time, she'll say yes. She's not a big fan of car trips.
Yeah, she's probably wants to fly
I still am.
time.
I still like to do it. Like that road trip that you and I did.
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
How much fun was that?
Yeah, that was really fun.
We went to the Eclipse.
Yeah, Tennessee.
And that was a 12-hour drive to Tennessee. And it was you, me, Bart, and TJ.
Yeah.
And there was no plans on that.
At all. Well, we knew where we were headed.
No, we knew we had to get to the Eclipse,
Yeah.
which, we knew it was going through Tennessee and North Carolina.
Yeah.
And, but we had no plans.
No.
And we just drove and figured it out. And you didn't have your ID. And
Yeah, that's right.
you look like you're 12. And so.
Yeah, George Mason, I got carded on the campus.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. But anyway, that was a great time.
Yeah.
But think about that experience. Even on the way back, we couldn't get back.
Yeah.
So we adapted and we hung out and did the caverns and stopped at the brewery in Hershey, Pennsylvania. But when you do stuff like that, and it allows for really great memories, great experiences.
Totally agree.
Like that trip was not an overly expensive. That was just a road trip. And, you can compare that to a first-class trip to China or, a Parisian vacation. They're just means to an end. You don't have to spend the money. There's lots of things you can do locally in the place you live. And I would just encourage people just to change their paradigm about gift giving and the time they spend to think about experiences with their friends and family.
Totally agree.
So great. Well, thanks for talking today.
Thanks. See you
Bye-bye.
soon.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Karen, I think you were supposed to say that.
Yeah, thanks. I'll take it from here.
All right. Well, we got to do this is the new Outcast.
Oh, the outro. The outro.
I think Outcast is a new word. All
Okay.
right. Outro. We're doing a new outro. We got to cover a few things.
All right.
One is what? Subscription.
Do you subscribe through?
We want people to subscribe to this, not just listen to it occasionally.
Okay, yeah. Check
The
us out.
second thing is nothing's better than what? A 5-star rating.
Always 5 stars.
Got to give us the 5 stars because we get better search outcomes. And the last thing is comments.
We need those.
Yeah,
we need your feedback.
We want to know what people are thinking. So you can check us out. The best way to do it if you're not sure, some people don't know how to do it. Go to our website. You can check it out. We'll have a full set of instructions. So whatever app you're using. Most people use, what do you use, Kiran?
I use Spotify.
You do?
Yeah.
So we have Spotify, we have iTunes, YouTube. There's a whole bunch of, whatever you use, we have it. And if we don't have it, let us know, and we'll try to figure out how to get it.
We can send you a paper-based instruction.
Actually, we do have paper-based instructions, even though that's a fun inside joke to our team. So anyway, Thanks for listening, and check us out on our next shows.
Thanks. See ya.